Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm feeling really, really good right now. I hope you're well. My name is Halise. You may know me as Star. I don't go by that in real life anymore, but I guess online it's okay. This is my second time recording this video. I wanted to get back to you and reintroduce myself, number one, because it's been a year since I posted. And also, I want to give you some updates, especially about why I chose to live in Mexico. I've been given a reminder by a really amazing beam of light that this video don't have to be perfect, so it won't be, but it'll be perfectly in the perfect timing. So let me check. No, I was going to say, let me check the sound, but I'm like, let me just do it. Okay. First, I want to reintroduce myself and briefly recap who I am and what this channel is about. Like I said, my name is Halise and I've gone by Star for many, many years. We can go into why later. I think I've already addressed that though, hidden, embedded somewhere deep in the past videos. But I am a Black woman, obviously, and I've been diagnosed with ADHD late in life. That has opened up my world entirely, changed my world, going to therapy for 2 years and learning about ADHD, how it affects my life and how I can cope and manage it. So I like to talk about things through the lens of ADHD because it always kind of plays a role in how I process things. So on this channel, we talk about life with ADHD, living, lifing, loving with ADHD, relationships, and relocationships, because there's nothing I love more than a relocation right now. I think it's one of the best ways to change your life. I'm going to explain why I chose Mexico as a destination. I'm going to talk about the neighborhood I lived in. I'll talk about the research and some of the preparation I did, briefly talk about the challenges and what I loved about it so much. In the end, I'll pretty much give you a little bit of advice, but I like to save going in depth on that for future videos. So let's get into it. The 3 factors that led me to choosing Mexico. First, I want to talk about where I was in life mentally, physically and mentally before I chose to actually make the move. With that said, I've moved a lot in life and I've had a bunch of different apartments and stuff. And I've lived in 3 different cities. And I have to say, moving out of the country was the best decision that I could have made for myself. I was living in New York for about the 3rd or 4th time I had moved up there when I chose to move to Mexico. And it was something that just really came. It was a long time coming. Even back in 2016, I was living in Charlotte at the time, or no, 2014 to 2016 or so, I decided that I wanted to live out of the country, but it didn't seem conceivable to me because remote work wasn't very popular and I knew I didn't want to teach English. So I really didn't know what I would do or how I would sustain myself. So it kind of never happened. That still pushed me to get my degree online and get my bachelor's degree because I thought, well, that will allow me to travel the world because I can always teach English. I knew I didn't really want to do it, but I was like, that is my key. That was one of my motivators and drivers. By the time I actually got the degree, I knew teaching was something I still tried later on, but it ended up not being a long-term thing. So I ended up having other drivers and motivators for finishing that degree. With that said, so I was in New York and I went because I really wanted to get out of my parents' house. I was back at my parents' house and I had been building up my savings and I really wanted to move to LA, but my roommate at the time, wanted to move to LA as well. And she was in New York though. So she was like, all right, just come here and we'll move together. And that didn't pan out, but I did end up moving to New York and it served a couple of purposes, but I wanted to be in LA. Mexico was a thought for me because of the way they explained how laid back the culture was. But because of the pay and remote work not being a thing at that time, when I first considered it, I didn't really think about it again until at the end of the New York year when I was in New York for the last time. So what had me consider Mexico again was my sister invited us to Cancun and Playa del Carmen, and I went and I loved it. Playa really did offer some great, environments and vibes. Still, I can't swim. And even though I want to learn, I still can't swim right now. And I thought that maybe I would get tired of the beachy vibe, but I definitely considered going back to Playa. And I said, regardless, I'll go to Mexico. My sister had traveled to many places in Mexico. I started doing research. And then I was like, there's many different cities I could try. It doesn't have to be either one of those. I just need to figure out where I want to be and where I want to live. What kind of city do I want to live in? Because I knew it wasn't New York anymore. So I ended up doing research. And then she took a trip to Mexico City and said, hey, I love it. You might love it too. I went ahead and booked 2 weeks in Roma Norte. Like, it's my favorite neighborhood there, and I fell in love with it. Of course, if you're going to stay in Roma Norte, you're going to fall in love with Mexico City. That's not all Mexico City has to offer, but it is one of the jewels to me of the architecture, just the vibe. I just love it. I did the 2-week thing. And then because my passport was going to expire quite quickly, I came back to South Carolina for a couple months, stayed with my parents, renewed my passport. And then I went to Mexico in September. I booked an Airbnb hostel, and it was just steps just kept happening. And it wasn't like any resistance. I only had support from my family, and anyone else didn't matter. That's very key. No one else really mattered. And then I wanted to do it. So I did it. And I kind of just felt like, hey, if I want to live on my own, if I want to live by myself, I need a place that I can afford. And for Mexico, economically, with me doing economic arbitrage, like by that time I had been working remotely for since 2019. I mean, it made sense. And then I found something that would sustain me there and that I could afford to live there. So it was great in that way. I took the remote job to Mexico City with me. And I even worked on the 2 weeks that I was there because the work wasn't that intense, and that was intentional. And then I ended up just living in Mexico City, and I worked remotely, earning in US dollars and living my life. While there, I just formed such a beautiful community with people, and locals and expats alike. There's a lot of Black expats in Mexico City, and, it was amazing. That's really what made me stay. It just continued to work for me. It just made sense. People were saying it could take you months to find what you want to look for in terms of living spaces. And I have to say, it depends on where you want to live. And so I didn't even look for an apartment. I did look, I went to go see one, but someone sent me one and said, hey, this isn't for me. Maybe it's for you. Go see the woman. She's really nice. I went, and we just connected, and I was like, hey, she's cool. I'm cool. I could see myself living here. Let's do this. And we made the deal right then and there. I moved out from the hostel that I was staying in, and the hostel was really interesting. It was cool, but it was cool meeting different people from around the world. But it was just I was the only female there during the time that I was there, pretty much. I think one guy him and his girlfriend were there for a little bit, but they didn't clean up after themselves in the kitchen. So I just wanted a certain environment. And so that's what kind of expedited my desire to leave that place. But otherwise, the room was huge. I had my own bathroom. The kitchen was huge, actually. It's just that I knew I wanted my own kitchen. I actually do a lot of work in the kitchen. I actually do cook and make things. And I do want my kitchen to be a certain way and in order. And this is a long time coming of me wanting to get to this place and having the domain, having my own space to be able to implement the environment that I want. It's very closely coming. I can feel it. I can't wait to go back and really build the kind of living environment that I want. So that first factor, I guess I'm going to say, is that I always wanted to go and live outside the country. The second factor was my sister, and I guess the third factor was economically, it just made sense. You can really afford to live there nicely. And by no means is Mexico City cheap, but it is less expensive than the United States. So how I researched and prepared for the move, I'm going to keep it a buck. I didn't really research it that much. I just made sure that I had a place to stay and that my money was right so that I could deal with any challenges that may arise. My thought process is this: if other people are doing it, it can't be that hard. And then I know that there are things that people are willing to put up with that I'm not, but based on my experience of going to Mexico and seeing how chill it was. And even though I still dealt with some certain challenges, like for instance, you might get Moctezuma's revenge if you drink some juice from off the street, there's little things you'll go through, nothing really was bad enough for me to say this isn't the experience for me. So I feel like if there's a ton of Black people, American Black people moving to Mexico City and living there, then it must be cool. I don't know. It's social proof, I suppose. So I didn't research the weather that much. When I went to visit, it was the rainy season, and it would rain for 20 minutes at a time. Actually, maybe less than 20 minutes at a time. It would hail later in the afternoon, but the rest of the day it would be sunny, and it would go back to being sunny until it was supposed to be dark during the rainy season. But it was just 2 weeks in July. So I didn't think to get a full picture. Could the weather be different this time around next year? It was vastly different. It ended up being almost no sunlight. The sunlight was cut down by 40 to 60%. It was devastating to me. And it's because of the lack of natural sunlight that I was getting. And so now I know, like I'm going to think about what I'm going to do for starting June, July, and August. Where am I going to be? Maybe I need to be somewhere else. Do I just get a temporary place? Do I rent out an apartment and sublease it? How am I going to sustain myself throughout the year this year? That's what I'm thinking about, because now I know the rainy season poses a challenge to me mood-wise because of the lack of sunlight. These are things that maybe you wouldn't think to look up beforehand. And some things you just learn by experience. I do like to be prepared, but I noticed that trying to be over-prepared for every little thing that might come up can stop you from taking action. So I highly recommend that you don't do that. And that's how I researched and prepared for the move. I mean, I watched videos, but I didn't want to be deterred by seeing something I didn't like. So I honestly just trusted that everything was easy and working out and showing promise. So I used that as my barometer to keep going. And that's how it was the entire year that I was there. It just kept making sense, and it still makes sense. Okay. So what are some of the challenges I faced during the process of moving? Well, I mean, that might be really disappointing to some, but I didn't really face any challenges. I mean, being a US passport holder and moving to Mexico, it very much was easy. When you enter the country, you get a 6-month visa. 6 months is plenty of time to leave the country and come back, even though I did overstay my visa because I waited till the last minute to book a trip out of the country, but then I ended up getting residency. So now for 4 years, I don't have to worry about leaving at a particular time. Although I do plan on having more frequent visits to the States and or outside of Mexico, because I think it's very important to leave your comfort zone and to travel. And because the States offers certain things like amenities, products, clothing, accessory, like it just provides you certain things, shoes at my size and the style that I want. I wear a size 10, 11. It's kind of difficult to find in Mexico. It may make sense for me to just come back. And plus I have parents, and I feel like I should visit them. Like there shouldn't be like these long gaps between seeing them. I mean, why? We're abundant. We can afford to bop around the country, why not? So I don't want to be stuck anywhere. And I would like to have more fluidity in my movement, more intention in my traveling. So yeah, I mean, even if that 6-month thing was there, it's just that I would like to be able to go when I want to. What I don't like about having the 6-month visa is that it just tells you when you have to leave by. And, nobody likes being told what to do. So like I said, I ended up staying in San Miguel Chapultepec. It's a very charming, very residential neighborhood. It still has lots of bakeries and cafes. I had a cafe to the right of me a block away. I had a cafe to the left of me a block away, and that side too, another block away. So, I mean, it was just a cute, charming neighborhood with the park right there. And honestly, I would go back. I'm glad I did this video because I'm like, I need to remember that, like, when it comes to finding a permanent place to live, I love that neighborhood, but also I'm not afraid to try something new. I mean, you really can't imagine like a place that just has so many great neighborhoods and so many good places to live. I mean, I don't know. I can. For me, that place is Mexico City. My favorite aspects of Mexico City is number one, hands down, the people. Their vibe is very chill. They're not pressed. I could count on one hand how many times in a year that I saw someone show a sign of impatience. Now, maybe they'll show it differently than we would. And so I wasn't detecting it and they were showing impatience, but I really just felt people were patient. I mean, waiting in line places, waiting for your food to be made, waiting for services to be done, waiting for questions to be answered. People just weren't pressed. And I need that because having ADHD, I can be just Mexico is good for my nervous system. You know what I'm saying? It's like for my health. So having ADHD, you can have a very like hyperactive nervous system where, just get easily triggered. You're easily ticked off and easily triggered. We have our customer service. We want it now. We have our Karen culture, and anyone can be a Karen, not just a white woman. Anyone can be a Karen. And I've brought Karen energy to Mexico sometimes because I got in my American entitlement at times, just thinking that things had to go the way that I thought they needed to go. But truthfully, they don't. And it is such an exercise in faith that God really has taken care of everybody. Like, you're good. Like, things are not going to fall apart because they didn't happen the way that you wanted them to. And that is like a constant lesson every single day. It really transformed my mind. It changed my brain. It changed who I am for the better. So, of course, that was my favorite aspect just the people, their mindset. Second favorite aspect, I just love, it's the culture. Like, there's so much rich culture in the entire country, but even in Mexico City, the parties, the music, I have to say that's one way that I really love to appreciate the culture. It's just the music, their appreciation for Afrobeat and all kinds of other like Afro-Caribbean and African music and Black music, 90s R&B, hip hop. Like, Mexicans really love that and they party down, and I'm right there with them. And it was my exercise. It was my community. It was my release. And I can't wait to return to it because it really contributed to my health, to be able to dance and move and see the same people all the time and just be in a safe place and exercise really hard and sweat. It really was a great experience. And I plan to do so much more of that. Let's see. Thirdly, so first it was the people, second, the culture and parties. And thirdly, I don't want to say the cost, because to me, that's just like way too obvious. Like, okay, of course, like, you're earning in US dollars and you're going to a country that earns in pesos. Like, whatever. That's just too on the nose. Thirdly, I'll say location, landscape. It wasn't too far from the beach in terms of you can catch a $40 flight to a beach somewhere. It had beautiful mountains, which I didn't really get super close to. I did go out in nature, like a little bit more isolated at one point, but I like the parks, just the landscape. It's very beautiful. Excuse me. They grow a lot of plants everywhere. I think it helps clean the air. It's just very walkable, very, very walkable city in itself. I'm really just someone who likes to observe different people living, and there's not just one way to live. And I just love witnessing that. And I like the way they do it. So that's one of my favorite aspects. Really quickly, advice for others. If you want to move to Mexico City, it doesn't really matter where you want to move. Just research to a point, figure out what your values are, research in regards to your values, and then just book a ticket. Book a scouting trip is a really great way to familiarize yourself. So like videos, talk to people who live there, join some online communities, and do a scouting trip of like 2 weeks, and then figure out what you need and just take the plunge. What do you have to lose? People move there with their kids, their entire families. People start businesses there. And I'm sure they do this in other places around the world. I watch a lot of content where people do that in Africa and they face challenges at times, but they decide to do what's worth it for them. And you can too. I really hope this video was mesmerizing and inspiring to you because I really enjoyed doing it. So let me go now, and I need to record some more videos. There's so many more questions to answer, even about the experience itself. I could write a book, but right now I'm just going to do videos. Anyway, take care, you all, and peace out. Happy dreamers, because ADHD is always dreaming happy dreams. Bye.